They say the quietest car is the safest, until midnight proves it isn't. On a dimly lit coach, a passenger slumps in his seat. By dawn, investigators whisper one word: ligature. What began as a routine ride becomes a case that challenges what counts as an accident, a crime, and a truth worth telling. The last local had rolled into the coastal dark, the kind of ride where ticket punches sound like cricket calls and time blurs between stations with names most riders never learn to pronounce. In the Divyang coach, reserved for passengers with disabilities, a guard would later say he'd seen a man dozing, chin to chest, the dim blue of an emergency light washing the window like low tide. His name, the police would discover, after a muddled chain of clues, was Muzan, 35, a sales representative who had boarded in Yeshwanthpur, headed toward Murdeshwar, a route that hugs the Konkan coast like a rumor. He was differently abled, a detail first learned not from any document, none were found on him, but from family who would drive all night after a shirt label pinged a city away: R.S. Taylor Chickpeat. The train drifted past Mulki after 10 in the morning, but the timeline began hours earlier, somewhere between the after-midnight quiet and the first station tea. To the guard, the passenger looked like so many others who ride out the night in the soft-edged democracy of a coach car. Exhausted, anonymous, safe by custom if not by law. By the time they reached Mulki, a routine glance became a shout for help. Unresponsive, no ID, rushed to the government hospital, declared brought dead. The body would be moved to Wenlock District Hospital, where an officer would note something no one wanted to say aloud at first: ligature marks around the neck, a detail that reclassifies a person from sleeper to case file. Police traced the last location of his missing phone near Sakleshpur, a signal flicker that suggested the living final miles could have been a different train within the train: who boarded, who watched, who took what was not theirs. His bag and mobile were gone, the kind of subtraction that makes investigators ask whether the motive was theft or whether theft was just the cover story left behind. In the first hours, the presumption is always the same: an untoward incident, a phrase from the Railways Act that can fold tragedy into bureaucracy if no one looks closely. But courts have warned against easy conclusions. Just because a body lies on railway property does not prove status as a bona fide passenger or an accidental fall. Evidence matters, and timelines must hold. In this story, the evidence begins with a stitched collar and the empty seat where a man didn't wake up. It also begins with a truth about midnight trains. The car is a village, and a village keeps secrets until someone brave or grieving knocks on doors long enough to wake it up. Morning became process: panchanama, seizure memos, phone tower slips, interviews that blend together until one detail refuses to be quiet. Rail staff remember a man in the Divyang coach, alone for long stretches, yet the family reports that his bag and phone are missing, and the last digital breadcrumb points to Sakleshpur, mountain country, where signals skip like stones. A senior officer says what few want to put on the record before the post-mortem: suspected murder for gain, the oldest motive wearing the newest mask. Pause and reflect. If a life can be reduced to a label on a shirt and a phantom ping on a tower, what does justice look like on a moving train, where witnesses disembark into different cities and memories evaporate like fog? Investigators split teams between Bengaluru and Mysuru, following the logic that stolen phones move with thieves, and thieves are creatures of habit. Meanwhile, in Wenlock's quiet halls, the ligature marks harden from speculation into probable cause, the kind of finding that turns a railway guard's discovery into a homicide inquiry. There is a reason courts caution against assumptions. In Delhi, a 2023 High Court ruling reaffirmed that a body on tracks does not automatically mean an untoward incident or a bona fide passenger claim. The law demands coherence between fact, cause, and status. Here, the deceased was in coach, with disability accommodations nearby, suggesting legitimate travel, but the absence of documents in the theft indicators complicate both insurance and compensation. This tension, the gray zone between accident and crime, has played out before in other systems. Riders harmed in cars without security staff, questions about patrol versus presence, and systems that learn safety one tragedy at a time. The case narrative gathers weight. Boarding at Yeshwantpur, night stretches past Sakleshpur, a phone's last gasp, the Divyang coach near Mulki, 10 to 10:15 discovery, hospital pronouncement. Family arrives after the WhatsApp blast about a tailor's label, a uniquely modern chain of custody where textile becomes testimony. Their statements add texture, differently abled, a sales job, a route he knew, details that nudge the story from statistic to person. Police float a theory. If robbery was the goal, strangulation leaves less noise, more time to disappear at a dark platform, a tactic seen in transport crimes where opportunity and anonymity intersect. But trains are also theaters of unexpected escalation. Consider the reading station case in England, where a late-night argument over loud music ended with a fatal blow from a horseshoe after arrival, proof that violence often incubates in-car and detonates on platforms. Midnight rides compress strangers into proximity. What happens inside is shaped by culture, policy, and chance, and the aftermath is shaped by how well evidence survives the miles. Investigators scour CCTV segments, coach cleaning logs, platform attendance notebooks, and the patchwork of passenger recollections that invariably conflict, and yet somewhere align. Tension peak 1. The post-mortem confirms ligature evidence consistent with strangulation. The missing bag and phone reinforce motive. Now the hunt focuses on a window between stations where a perpetrator could step off unseen. Tension peak 2. A tower record in Sakleshpur corresponds to a known corridor for resale of lifted devices, prompting raids that test whether the phone's IMEI ever breathed again after the ride. If it lit up, it might lead to a handler. If it didn't, it says the killer understood the simplest rule: turn the story off at the source. Another pause and reflect. Courts demand more than intuition, yet families live by it while they wait, clinging to timelines because they are the only thing that doesn't lie when grief tries to. On that coach, a man entrusted himself to the public promise of rail travel, and the breach is not just criminal, it is civic, because the car belongs to everyone, and therefore to no one in particular. The officers in Bengaluru and Mysuru keep knocking. The case file grows heavier. Somewhere along the line, a cane sits unclaimed in a property room that smells faintly of diesel and dust. When the postmortem landed, an old working theory took on the bite of certainty: ligature constriction, consistent with manual placement, time of death aligned with overnight hours before the Mulki Pass. A parallel team's quiet win came not from the handset, but from the bag. A vendor in Bengaluru remembered buying it cheap from a man on the platform 3 days prior, a detail that gave detectives a face, then a name, then an address that smelled like damp clothes and fairy soap. In questioning, he denied murder, swore the bag was found under a seat, but could not explain the rapid flip to cash in a district where resellers keep informal ledgers, like rosaries. The twist arrived from law, not lore. To secure a charge that would endure, investigators had to reconcile the realities laid out by the Delhi High Court: status, causation, and context, with the raw facts of a man dead in a reserved coach. They built the case not on a fall from a moving train or an unknowable scuffle on open tracks, but on in-car events, opportunity confined by schedule, a vulnerability amplified by a quiet carriage, and a theft that stitched motive to method. The bag reseller led to a small ring moving stolen goods across corridors, but the suspected assailant stayed one station ahead until a raid in Mysuru netted a hoodie with trace fibers that matched the coach seat and a length of cord cut from a backpack strap. Immediate aftermath: an arrest, a press note careful to say, "Suspected murder for gain." A family who finally had a place to bring flowers that wasn't just a window seat in memory. The timeline gelled. Boarding at Yeshwantpur, sometime between Sakleshpur's last tower breath and the Mulki approach, the assault, property removed, assailant offloaded into the churn of stations where anonymity is a kind of absolution. In charging documents, investigators sidestep the pitfalls identified by courts in other cases by anchoring every claim to independent pieces of proof: CCTV timestamps, vendor statements, forensic consistency, rather than the inference that death on railway property equals accident or entitlement. There is a broader context to midnight trains and public trust. Other systems have faced their own night terrors, murders that ignite debates over patrols, onboard security, and whether passengers are protected inside cars or merely observed from a distance. In those cases, video can be abundant and still fail to save a life. Policy evolves in the echo of loss, not the prevention of it. Here, the Divyang coach carried a promise beyond a seat: accommodation, dignity, a margin of safety that failed at the exact moment it should have held. In the months that follow, cases like this bend institutions, patrol patterns adjust, camera audits increase, claims protocols revisit how disability accommodations intersect with late-night staffing. Families, meanwhile, navigate forms that ask them to prove what they already know: that their person was traveling lawfully, that the loss was not an abstraction best filed under incident, that dignity should not depend on evidence surviving a train ride. The moral question lingers: when public spaces belong to everyone, who in practice is responsible for the most vulnerable passenger at midnight? The system, the fellow rider, or the law after the fact?
Don't forget to subscribe to Real Mystery Reports for more strange, dark, and profoundly human stories. New true mysteries every day.